So when Joe asked me to speak today, I wanted to invite us to just slow down a bit and just name this reality that a lot of people in Ukraine are living in right now. Not just the war itself, but the texture of the daily life underneath that war. We're now like almost 4 years into the war. I think next month it will be 4 years exactly. And over the past month, the strain in Ukraine has intensified again. A lot of people are living like we've been talking with little to no electricity or heat, some receiving power for only a few hours a day. Others, like in Kyiv and further east, are not receiving any at all. And this is not merely inconvenient, it reshapes every aspect of their ordinary life. Things like how do you maintain basic hygiene when there's no hot water or no water at all? How do you shop for food when power outages affect supply chains, refrigeration, transportation? How do you cook when electricity is unreliable and you live in an apartment where propane or wood fires aren't even possible? How do you work, study, parent, or minister when sleep is interrupted by cold, air raid alerts, or fear? These are not abstract stressors. They accumulate hour by hour, day by day. On top of this, missile attacks and bombings have increased again. Hypersonic missiles, in particular, they arrive without any warning. Often there is no siren, no time to prepare. The body never gets the signal that it's safe to stand down. So I think of my Ukrainian teacher in Kyiv. She lives in an apartment with two sons. They have no heat, and because they live in a high rise, they can't use alternative heating sources. One of her sons, her youngest one, who's now 9 years old, has developed a stress-related form of epilepsy. His nervous system's responding to prolonged threat in the only way it knows how. And this story is becoming more common, not less. Nearly everyone I speak with in Ukraine right now is more dysregulated than they were even a few months ago. Not because they're failing, but because the human nervous system was never designed to endure unrelenting threat without relief. And as many of us here in the US, we're preparing for this weekend and for the possibility of losing power for a few days. I know here in Nashville, we are preparing for that. We're thinking about flashlights, food, warmth, and contingency plans. I invite us to hold this comparison gently but honestly. Imagine that level of disruption not for a weekend, but as a daily reality, while also living under the constant threat of bombing. This is the context in which our partners, our staff, students, pastors, and families are showing up, still teaching, still serving, caring, worshiping, and they're still leading. Scripture reminds us that we are but dust, finite, embodied, dependent creatures. Trauma does not erase faith, but it does tax the body and the mind that faith lives inside. And that matters for how we as a group lead. Grace is not the suspension of responsibility. Grace is the right response to a diminished capacity. When people live in prolonged stress, their cognitive bandwidth narrows, executive functioning weakens, memory and their focus suffer, emotional regulation becomes more fragile, and communication changes, and it often becomes shorter, flatter, or even less precise. This is not spiritual failure, it is physiology, the way that we are designed. When we misinterpret trauma responses as a lack of commitment, lack of competence, or lack of faith, we unintentionally place heavier burdens on already weary shoulders. Jesus consistently responded to human limitation with compassion. He noticed hunger, exhaustion, fear, and grief. He didn't ask people to transcend their humanity, he met them within it. And this is the model we are invited to follow. So as I was thinking about these remarks, I thought I would offer some practical ways that we as a group could offer some support and grace to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters, because I believe that this is the heart of the leadership right now. The first thing that we can do is we can actually just name the context out loud like we are today. Grace begins with naming reality. When we acknowledge the conditions that people are living under, the cold, fatigue, danger, uncertainty, we communicate safety. We say, we see you. We understand what this is costing you. This mirrors the biblical practice of lament, truth telling in the presence of God and in one another. The next thing that we can do is we can adjust our expectations without abandoning purpose. Trauma-informed leadership does not say nothing matters, but it does say people matter first. This might look like flexible timelines, prioritizing essential tasks over ideal ones, allowing good enough to be good enough for a season. Grace allows the mission to continue without crushing those who carry it. The third thing that we can do is then interpret their behavior through a trauma lens. When communication is delayed or fragmented or even emotionally flat, ask yourself, what might this person's nervous system be carrying right now? Assuming good intent is not naivety, it is wisdom. It prevents relational rupture and preserves trust. Another thing that we want to do is we want to simplify wherever possible. Trauma reduces capacity for complexity. As leaders, we can streamline reporting, reduce unnecessary meetings, clarify priorities, and avoid last-minute changes when possible. Remember that simplicity is not weakness, it is mercy. Another thing we can do is we can simply check in on people, not just progress. A simple question, how are you holding up this week, can be profoundly regulating just to have someone ask you that. It reminds people that they're valued, not only for what they produce, but for who they are. This reflects the heart of Christ, who consistently saw the person before the task. We can normalize the need for rest for them. In war, rest is not indulgence, it is survival. Encouraging rest without guilt honors the truth that even God rested and that Sabbath was made for humans, not humans for Sabbath. Burnout does not serve the kingdom. We can also model steady, grounded presence. Leadership is contagious at the nervous system level, so we can lead with calm, patience, predictability, and measured responses. When we do that, we help regulate the systems around us. In Scripture, peace is not the absence of trouble, it is the presence within it. We can hold hope without holding or forcing positivity. Faith doesn't require us to bypass pain. We can speak of hope while still honoring grief. We can trust God's faithfulness without demanding emotional resilience people may not have access to right now. Hope in trauma grows best in honesty. And then we can also offer words of encouragement as a ministry presence. In times of prolonged and continuing trauma, knowing that someone is remembered matters deeply to them. So as board members, a simple and meaningful way that we can offer support is simply by writing short notes of encouragement, messages that Joe or I can pass along to our Ukrainian friends, colleagues, teachers, pastors, and partners. They don't need to be polished or long. What matters is presence. A few sentences that you might write that might say, you are not forgotten. We see the cost you're bearing. We're grateful for your faithfulness. Scripture reminds us that words fitly spoken are like apples of gold in settings of silver. In trauma, kind and steady words can become anchors. These notes can also gently remind our Ukrainian friends of a shared truth. Some are called to go, most are called to give, all are called to pray. For those who cannot leave, who feel powerless in the face of such suffering, prayer becomes not a lesser offering, but a faithful one. Our words can help carry the truth across the borders. This practice costs us very little, but it communicates solidarity, care, and spiritual companionship. It reminds those living under immense strain that they are not carrying this alone. Grace is not an extra we offer when things go wrong. Grace is the leadership posture required when people are living under conditions no person's nervous system was ever designed to endure. If we lead with understanding, flexibility, compassion, and steadiness, we don't weaken the mission. We honor and protect the people God has entrusted to us. And in doing so, we reflect a God who draws near to the weary, shelters the vulnerable, and carries what we cannot.